Hi. Today we're going to talk about home and limit switches. You may recall from the first video that I disabled X and Y in the homing and I was using software limits only. I have been able to install a new X home and limit maximum switch for the X axis. I still do not have a Y positive limit switch, but I do have the Y negative limit switch. So with that and the two of them that are functioning on the Z axis, we'll be able to go ahead and set up the homing system on this machine. I'm going to go ahead and switch this to the screen right now and show you all the settings in the software that need to be done in order for this to happen. Okay, on this from the home screen here, we're going to go ahead right now and we're going to hit alternate I. Now there's a couple of ways of doing this to check your home and limit switches. This is the way I prefer. Now you can use the input section here of your screen and keep an eye on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 as you trip your switches. What I like to do, however, is actually use this section of the screen, because it not only tells me which one, but it labels it for me so that I do know that I have it correct. So if you keep your eye on that section, as I trip the X negative home switch, you'll be able to see it trip. When I trip the X positive limit, you'll be able to see it trip. You'll also see when I do the Y switch, the same thing. The reason I like doing it this way is because right here it clearly tells me that I tripped the X minus, X positive, and Y minus switches. So I know that I have them wired correctly. If I trip what I thought was the X positive and it showed me X negative, I'd know I'd have to switch the two wires around. You can figure it out from here, but it's just much easier to use this section of your screen right here to do that. Now, before you do anything else, you really need to get your table to the middle of its travel. So I like to bring the Y out to the middle, scroll the X over to its middle, and then bring the Z down to about its midpoint. This way I have a lot of room to work. Now, in order to do this, you need to set your direction of travel up on your tables correctly. The way you do that is you hit F1, go to F3, configure, type in your password once again, 137, enter. Go to your machine and go to your motor, F2 one more time. Now, when setting this up, we need to consider that as you look at it in the movement, you have to imagine that the spindle itself is moving. So, X minus, if you're standing on the right-hand side of your machine as I am, X minus should move the table towards you. X positive should move the table away from you. Same way with X and Y positive and minus. Y positive should bring the table out away from the machine. Y negative should take the table back toward the machine. And Z negative should take the Z axis down, while Z positive should bring it up to the top. If you do that, then you have it all set up correctly. So the table is actually moving in the opposite direction from what the spindle would be moving. Set it up like this first. There's some very important things to remember here. This kind of threw me for a loop the first time I did this, which is why I wanted to really make the video about the homing and limit switches. When I got my machine, hooked up my motors, I have to set Y and X here on the direction reversed. I have to change this to yes so that I can get them to move in the right direction so they move as I anticipate them to move. But by doing this, you now negate the positive and negative directions here. So while this says negative and this says positive, while this column has been, or this row has been changed because I reversed its direction, it originally comes from the factory as 1 and 2 on limit and 1 and 2 on home. Since I reversed this, I need to now set this to 2 and 1 and 2 and 1. The same way with the y-axis, I have reversed it. So instead of being 3 and 4, it's 4 and 3, 4 and 3. And then I did not change the z-axis, so I left it as 5 and 6, 5 and 6. If you make sure that that's set up that way, anytime you've reversed one of these, you need to reverse the order of your limit and your homing directions. If you do that, you could now go over and jog your machine, manually throw the switch. You should be able to jog the opposite direction off of it as if it were coming off the switch. That's why you want to move your table to the middle, so that when you have plenty of room to work while you're making sure that that's functioning. Once you've got that set up so that you can trip the switch manually and jog in the opposite direction with both switches, then you know that you're good to go, and you can go ahead and start setting up the rest of your homing sequence. So make sure that this is set correctly. Once it is, you press F10 to save it. Now I like to go in from this point, I like to go to the jog screen. Now I have moved my axes to the furthest position. On the x-axis, I know that I've only given myself about 17 inches. I could actually adjust that so I get the full 18 inches of travel, but it moves about 17.2 inches. So I have set up my software limiting to 17 inches, so that I should never, in theory, hit that limit switch. The software should stop it from ever getting to the 17.2 necessary to strip the switch. The y-axis, as you'll recall, I don't have a positive switch, but I do know that I can travel 12 inches before safely without contacting anything on a hard stop. So I've set the software for 12 inches until I get that switch set up. And then the z-axis moves 4.32 inches in its total before it hits the limit switch. So I have set it to be negative 4.3. So in theory, again, it should never touch a limit switch. It should only be able to touch the home switches. So I set this up as a backup just to make sure that my machine never gets out of range, and I should never hit a limit switch. Especially if you don't have a limit switch like I don't have on Y, you should set this to make sure that you're safe and that you don't hit a hard stop and damage your ball screws. Hit F10 to save that. Now we need to go out one more screen here. Now from here, go back to F1, which is your control screen. When you come out here, as you'll recall at the beginning, we set this up to jog, where it says machine home and power up. Right now, as you can see, I have it set to home switch. By setting it to home switch, what it's going to do is at power up, it's going to ask me to hit cycle start, and then it's going to search for the homes. So that's the way I have it set up. Now remember, when you do this, you have to save it, and then you have to exit out of here, and then you have to shut down the machine and restart the computer and power down the board and restart the board together so that they can come back up. Right click on that icon on your CNC 11 mil and then bring up the property dialog box, properties, and then we're going to say open the file location, and what you're looking for is the CNC M home file, and if you look over here in your type, it tells you HOM file. Hit enter and open that up. Now, when mine comes from the factory, I had an M92 on the Z-axis. M92 tells the machine to travel to the positive direction until a home switch is found. M91 tells it to travel in the negative direction until a home switch is found. Now, I always home my table so that if you're looking from the top, the lower left-hand corner is home. So from the factory, this file comes as M92Y, which is positive, and that's not what I want. I want both my X and my Y to travel in their negative directions till they find a home switch. So you need to set yours up in your table, no matter how you decide to do it, but just set it up so that each one goes in the correct direction before you actually run this home file. Once you have that set the way you like it, close that out, save it. Now, if you have set this up correctly, your screen should now look like this when it's set up. It says machine setup not complete. You get this white box, kind of ignore what it says there. Read what it says here, machine home not set. Press cycle start to send machine to the home position. So, I'm going to go ahead and switch the camera over here to the machine, and then we'll go ahead and hit cycle start. Now when I hit cycle start, the Z-axis will be the first one. Remember, we told it to go positive till it finds a home switch. And so it retracts, finds the home switch, and then returns off of that home switch and parks. Then it moves the X-axis, again in the negative direction this time, until it finds the home switch. And once it finds the home switch, it will then go forward again until it comes off of that switch and parks. And then now it will move in the Y direction, negative once again, until it finds the home switch, and then it once again parks. That's really all that's required in order to set up the home switches on your machine. Now, you may be wondering, if you're new to this entire CNC thing, why would it be so important to have a home? Well, let me tell you, if you make a mistake or if you cut something and let's say you've zeroed off the center of a part and you have begun a cut and you now have removed the center of your part, maybe it's an oblong hole or something that's it would be very difficult to find center again, the exact center. But you need to make a change before you continue cutting that part, so you stop the process. Well, now you can't home off that center or zero off that center because you have removed the material where that center was. So you still want to be able to cut on the part and have it be as precise as possible. All you have to do is make sure that your machine is homed again, and you now know that the offset from that home coordinates on a machine are G53. Work offset coordinates begin at G54. So the machine coordinates on this machine don't change. So as long as I have set the machine coordinates back to their original place, I can now go back to G54 or any other offset that I have pre-established in the machine, and it will then begin cutting just as if I had centered off on that part. So long as I haven't changed or moved where that part is, then everything else will come out well. That's why homing is so important. It allows you to restore or restart a process and work on it from there. Also, if you do set up other work offsets, let's say, as you can see here, I have a vise mounted to my machine. If I set up an offset for G55 that goes from this back side of the vise and this corner of the vise, and I tell it that this is 0, I can now set a part in there. If I'm going to cut multiples of that same part, I don't have to re-zero every time I go to cut that part. All I have to do is make sure that it's aligned with my fixture, type in the G55 command or add that to the beginning of a cut file, G55, it will then go from its machine coordinates to that specified location and begin the cut process. And I don't have to go through the entire time of setting up and edge finding each and every time I put a part in there. So that's why it's so important to have a steady, repeatable home position on your machine. It allows you to then work from offsets anywhere on that machine, and they will always be precisely the same. I hope that this has helped you out. If you were having the difficulty I was having with that reversing of those two numbers and understanding that you have to do that if you reverse the motor direction in order to make everything else work, then I hope this has helped you figure that out a little bit and go through it. If you haven't done one of these yet, telling you this, I'm hoping will keep you from having that problem to begin with. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again on the next time.